Welcome to the podcast, Lily. How are you?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So I like to start off the episodes. If you can tell the listeners and the audience a little bit about your professional background and a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. So, I actually started my career not in tech and not in startups. I started in government and politics. And, really out of school, my dream was to make a big impact. And I thought the best way to do it was in the public sector. So I did that for about half a decade, was with the federal government, then state and local, and was out in the city of Long Beach doing a rotational management program, which was a great way to kind of dip into many different areas of operations in how you efficiently and effectively run local services. And when we think about local government, it's usually what comes top of mind is, did my garbage get picked up? Are the streets safe? Can I access the library services? Does the fire department help when there's an issue? These are the things that are top of mind. If those run smoothly, you never have to think about your local government services. But the moment that something happens, you hit that pothole on your bike and you curse your local government, then you really start to realize everything that's happening behind the scenes to make things run smoothly. So I learned a lot during that time. After about a couple of years there, I went over to work with Mayor Bloomberg and did special projects with the Department of Education. And that was also a really interesting experience. Did that for about 2 years. When I left, I started my first tech company, and that was focused on taking a lot of the pain points in local government, namely how difficult it is to communicate with local government. So what we now know of as 311, we built the first web and mobile tools to streamline that across any city in the country. We ended up working with a couple hundred cities, and the last year of operations, it was also used by some commercial real estate buildings as well, like the Burj Khalifa. And we were then acquired by a company we had known for a couple of years. It was a great merger. Their vision was government in the cloud, government as a service. So it was a really natural fit for the two companies. It took a couple of years and to advise companies and travel, learn how to surf as I traveled. And one of the companies had a quick, fun little acqui-hire. And then after that went on to, for some reason, got the itch to start another company. So here I am today, starting Piñata, and excited to talk a little bit more about what we're up to at Piñata.
Tell us a little bit about, the founding story behind Piñata and ultimately what you're trying to solve with it.
Yeah, Piñata is really looking to solve some of the pain points that renters feel in the market. I've been a renter on and off my entire adult life. I actually calculated how much I've paid in rent over the years, and it's creeping up north of $350,000 in rent. Wow. Which is a small fortune for most Americans. And just even saying that out loud continues to shock me, and just how much I paid on rent. Yet when I think about what I've gotten back, outside of the great places I've rented, no credit reporting, nothing back. If I've spent that amount on any business, there would likely have been some sort of loyalty layer on top, some sort of reward system back in play. And so we're really, for us, it's been thinking through what can we do to really fundamentally change what renters can get back. And that's been the mission we've been working towards. So it's empowered us to go into the market and work with all 3 credit bureaus. So now with every payment that you make as a renter, not through Piñata, you can pay any method. We want to report that data point to all 3 bureaus so you get that credit score boost. So that's been core to what we've worked on the past couple of years. We're the only service that does that for free for any renter to TransUnion across the country. And it's really no strings attached. There's no setup fee. There's nothing you have to sign up for and pay for to get that service. On top of that, you get points for every payment. Again, we're just collecting the data. You don't have to pay through Piñata. You get points, and then you can save those points and spend them on different types of rewards that we have in the program.
Before we jump a little bit further into how you guys do some of this, where'd the name come from, Piñata?
Piñata's, I wish I could take credit for it. It was actually our IP lawyer of all people And there was a dinner, kind of thinking through some different ideas and challenges that we were trying to tackle. And one of them was the name of the company. And it was very straightforward names at first, with rent in it, usually some iteration of rent something, rent rewards. And he said, you should just call it Piñata in the middle of eating his dinner. You should call it Piñata. It's about cracking open the best stuff in life. And that's really what you guys are trying to do for renters. And it stuck with us. And we love the name Piñata.
Is there a misconception about those that rent? There is a perceived notion that if you're renting, maybe that you can't own, you don't have the ability to own. Is there that perception in the market? And do all renters eventually want to become home buyers or homeowners, apartment owners? Or do they just want more from the rental process to ensure that what they're putting in, they're at least getting something back?
Yeah, that's a great question. We think of it in a couple different cohorts. There's the cohort of renter where it's a predicament. They'd much rather be owning a home, but they can't. And their financial situation, economic situation requires them to be a renter. And, or maybe it's, their inability to stay in one place with the job market. And so they have to be renters. And then there's the cohort of renter where it's actually a lifestyle choice. And we're seeing that cohort, it's smaller, but it's growing, of renter choose to rent because they actually want that flexibility. They don't want to be tied to one neighborhood. They may not even want to be tied to the same city. And also having that flexibility to try out different types of places and move up and down in size, depending on, are they early in their career, late in their career, are they retiring? We're actually seeing a lot of renters who, much to our surprise, later stage renters. And so they're 45 and up, and they're renting. When surveyed, a lot of them are saying kids are out of the house. We're in early retirement. It's interesting to see that segment of renters start to increase as well.
When it comes to the impact some of this data can have on a credit score, how big can that impact be? And how do you work to actually make the rental payments reportable to the bureaus? How does some of that work so that it does show up on the credit report and you do get credit for it?
Yeah, great question. So on average, this is all third-party studies. On average, TransUnion, based on their study, has found that credit reporting can impact rental scores by up to 60 points. Other reports by the other bureaus have said even north of 100 points. Now, there's going to really be a difference here based on where you're starting with your credit score. And if you even have a credit score, a very thin credit file. And so that's obviously going to impact, if you're that segment of renter, you're going to be impacted much more heavily by rental credit reporting, because every month you're going to have that repeat on-time rent payment show up. Now, if you have already an excellent score, it's going to impact you much less than a lower credit score. So the studies are actually bracketed across the country, and they look at the different cohorts of renters.
In terms of the credit score itself, as someone who has been a renter and is working with renters, how broken do you still see the credit scoring system itself? In many ways, you still, to boost your credit score and to get a credit score that is north of 700, 750, you still have to go into debt in many ways, pay off the debt and prove that you can be worthy of whether it be a loan, a mortgage, or whatever. Do you view the credit scoring system as still broken today as someone who's working with this type of person, this type of renter?
I think the credit scoring system isn't transparent. And I think that's one of the biggest flaws in the system, is that renters, consumers generally, don't understand truly how they can impact their credit score. And for something so fundamental, we talk about it as the passport to the modern economy, something so fundamental to consumers, to get a home loan, to get a car loan, to and even apply for your next rental unit, they'll oftentimes want to pull your credit score and credit information. Consumers should understand how to maintain and continue to improve that credit score. It should be a very clear system. Unfortunately, it's not. And even even folks in the credit industry oftentimes can't tell you why your score dipped or increased. And I think that that's something that I would like to see the industry make a serious fundamental shift to change. And I think because it is privatized, it's difficult to actually require any of the companies, any of the major bureaus rather, to make that change. And so really looking at the private sector to come in and try to add some clarity to that might be the next necessary step here.
How else do you work beyond the credit score? How else do you work with renters when it comes to, you referenced it quickly at the top, rewards, and is there a bit of a psychology that, previously you paid into your rent, you felt like you were getting nothing, but now you get your rent reported, you get cash back rewards. How much does that play into the psychology of, all right, now, it feels like renting is at least giving me something back, when previously, before your company and maybe others, that it felt like it was kind of money being thrown away?
Yeah, we find that it's actually the primary behavioral nudge that's getting renters to sign up. And in some cases, they're reporting it's the reason why they made a choice, all things held equal. It's the reason why they made a choice between one rental unit and another, because the difference here is that some property management companies will be adding in other incentives to the Piñata platform to incentivize lease renewals, to incentivize properly maintaining the unit. And there are a whole slew of other incentives that they want to incentivize. But really for renters, it really does put something back into their pocket. They're not gaining equity in the homes. They're not able to really get the upside benefits that homeowners do, yet they are spending quite a large sum on that rental amount. And so we also have seen a lot of our renters continue to save their points, which start to really become very meaningful towards the end of 1-2 year lease cycles that they have. And so we're excited about seeing that early feedback amongst our renters in terms of what they're able to actually put back in their pocket. Taken a lot of feedback and looking to launch ways to help renters be smarter about how they're saving for and paying for rent. And so that's actually something that'll be coming down the pike soon.
As someone that's worked in the public sector, and at various levels of the public sector and government, what more can be done to move people that want to move from, say, where they are today, where they feel like they have to rent, to up the scale to owning a home and feeling like, all right, I've made that progress? Can government do more? Obviously, fintech and the private sector have started to help some of these people, especially in the home buying experience, but overall it's still not fully fixed, and it's still very much a something that's out of reach for a lot of families and a lot of people, the actual home owning experience.
Yeah, and so is the question, Todd, how can government help in allowing more families to become homeowners?
I mean, it's kind of both sides, which is, in your experience, is government the answer, or does it have to be driven from the private sector? Like, is there something that's obviously missing in the market from your experience, or is government kind of limited in what they can do, and it really needs to be driven from the private sector through, say, companies like Piñata and others who are trying to solve for some of the issues that have been stuck in the market for a while?
I think for government really to step in here, they'd have to really create the right incentive models for private sector companies, both new development opportunities, which are slowing down. The new number of new permits for constructions have drastically decreased. And so really to create the right incentive structure for the private development market. So we see these new homes and these new development projects continue. The financing side's a major component for most families. We just talked about some of the challenges with credit reporting and the inequities there. And so they'd have to play there. And then on the consumer side as well, significant capital would have to be put towards some sort of matching and incentive program on the consumer side to really make sure that people can meet those down payments and even qualify for home loans. So I think the reality of having government make significant changes here, I think feels like a far off dream. And so, I really think it's a private sector. It's likely a combination of partnerships between public and private sector, but largely a push by private sector companies. And we're starting to see some really interesting models pop up in the market on rent to own models and other ways to help segment a renter that wouldn't normally have been able to buy in a traditional way, right? And even cash down alternatives, right, to be more competitive in your offer. So there's some interesting models coming out for those families that are on the cusp of being able to, but not quite there yet. The other thing we're seeing is it may not be the dream of home ownership is a classic American dream, but there's so many ways that you can use your capital outside of owning a home that may even be a more stable investment and something, I think with banking and investing options, there's a lot of different ways now where renters can put their money and actually see the same level of return, if not more. So this idea of rentership, we're really starting to see that pop up across many different asset classes. It's not just your home, it's your car, which we all know of, but it's also things like clothing, handbags. You don't have to own something your whole life. You can rent it, enjoy it for a period of time, and then enjoy something else. We're seeing rentals pop up in so many different segments. You can even borrow people's pets for a weekend and rent people's pets. So, I think the mindset is starting to shift with consumers that we may not have to own things in order to get value from it in the rental market. So,
is that to pick up on that a little bit? Is there a trend, or at least amongst the people that are maybe a bit younger and beginning to look at their careers and to look at where they want to go in life, that owning a home might not be ultimately what they want? Is there data or is there studies that have been done that said, all right, 25, 30 years ago, 80% of people wanted to own a home, and that number's 40% now? Obviously I'm making up numbers, but is there a trend towards owning a home is just not the ultimate goal anymore?
Absolutely. We've been starting to see higher reports coming in of especially younger renters coming in saying they don't necessarily want that. And I remember dating myself here, but I remember stock investing used to come with a charge, a fee on every single transaction
Yep.
you could make, and in many cases minimums at the brokerages. So it was hard. The barrier was high to invest in the market. Now it's zero fee investing, fractional investments you can make. There's crypto. There's so many interesting plays on what you can do. Risky, still just as risky, but all to say that there are other ways for people, young and older, to actually make more with their money potentially. Now, of course, that's not to say that the majority of our renters still don't say, they are still saying they want to own a home eventually, but we're actually seeing the numbers that are coming in show us that actually more renters are saying, hey, we'd actually like to take the capital and do something else with it.
It's fascinating. Since you've launched, what's the biggest lesson that you've learned about Piñata thus far?
I think for us, it's really been, the focus on how we can nudge behavior in the rental market. We were really focused initially, really not about necessarily gaining points and what you can do with it, but that was something that renters said, hey, we actually want to put more back in our pocket. I think we also learned that in the market, many homes report they can't even save $300 a year. which is, pretty shocking number for us to realize, hey, even if we can put $20 back in somebody's pocket a month, $30 back, that's hugely significant. So really shifting our model to make sure that, it wasn't just about, looking at certain deal types, but really how can we put more cash back into people's pockets? How can we help them save better for rent? And, of course, what we learned during the process over the past 2 years is the realities of building your credit and some of the challenges for consumers out there, especially renters, to build their credit, and just how many renters don't know about the impact of credit reporting. Less than 2% of renters have their rent payments on their credit scores. Again, none of my $350,000 in rent went to my credit score, which I found out when I tried to apply for my first home loan. So that's really, some of the learnings that we've seen over the years, and try to refine our model to help improve and make that process more efficient.
Yeah, I think none of the 100,000+ that we've paid into rent is reported. I think when we got our first home, the bank did ask for receipts from our landlord, which I guess played into us, being good borrowers, but wasn't actually an official part of the process.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. They ask for receipts. Yeah, with us, it's the idea is we know that people will be renters, become homeowners, become renters again. And so we live as the source of truth for your rental payments. The realities are, can you pull rent payments from 5 years ago from a landlord?
Yeah.
On maybe 5 properties, that's going to be a tough ask. And so we're actually working with agencies to really give them that data file efficiently. So if they are asking for a loan, you'll be able to pull your 10 years of rental payment history that's verified on the ledger, and it's not touched. And so it becomes that source of truth for the new lending partners.
What's the best piece of advice that you've received thus far?
Best piece of advice is, you don't know what you don't know. And so, always stay curious. And that's something that I've stuck to throughout my career. I remember actually the first job I got out of college, that was the piece of advice. And he said, that's why we hired you. You asked the most questions, you were the most curious. And, it really continues to push us in the company. We're always trying to look at different ways to see the same issue and how to attack and address it. So, for us, it's always about staying curious, always about staying nimble, and continuing to test and iterate.
Tell us a little bit more about those around you. What does the team look like? How big's the team? Are you, a remote first company? Tell us a little bit more about the team at Piñata.
Oh yeah, we're about 20 people right now, growing steadily, and always looking for amazing talent, people both on the tech and engineering side, and sales, growth, and marketing for us. And let's see, in terms of what was the other question there on team? And remote first. Absolutely, we are fully remote. We actually started the company during COVID, and so we know no other way to work together than remotely. The team works well together remotely. We're spread across the US, but mostly in New York, Austin, and LA.
I saw that you've raised a little bit of outside capital. How was the investing process, and what did you learn about Piñata by going through, pitches and talking to investors?
Yeah, we closed our Series A in March of this year, led by Wilshire Lane Capital, and follow-on investments from a handful of other really great groups. And I think that we've learned from when we raised our seed about a year and a half prior, it's such a different market now. When we talk about rent rewards, building credit with rent payments, I remember when we first went out to start pitching, we were having to educate investors on what it means to build credit with your rent payments. And many of them actually didn't know that was possible. And if the investors didn't know that was possible, you can imagine what consumers, the shock consumers get when they realize that they can actually have that service. But then also this idea of rent rewards, right? Building loyalty, getting something back for your rent payments. I remember a lot of investors saying, well, they're getting the roof over their heads. Isn't that enough? And so now it's such a dramatic shift, right? They're actually thinking about incentive models that have worked in other private markets, hotels, airlines, credit cards, even your coffee shop. There are certainly technology services that have streamlined that for other industries, and rent is your biggest payment every month. So we really have seen just such a dramatic shift in the response from the investor market.
If another founder picked up the episode and you had one piece of advice for them, what would that be?
For other founders, persistence, just stay persistent. I think we must have pitched 50 to 100 property management companies, only to get a handful initially to pilot. And we shifted the model. We learned from the feedback, iterated during COVID, and that model hit. We had 100 property management companies sign up in that first 2 months after that shift and pivot that we made. But it wasn't without a lot of grit and persistence, and you do need some thick skin at some point when you're getting 50 no's for every yes that you're seeing. So really just continue to go at it, but also to find time. I think in the startup space, it's there's this expectation of extreme grit that you never take a beat, you never take a moment outside of just moving ahead. And I don't know if really you ever hit a nice balance, or rather it's probably very hard to hit a full balance of work, life, fun, but really trying to find those moments for something that keeps you motivated, keeps you going. For me, it's surfing, it's getting out into nature, but really finding that thing that you just know you have to do once a week, twice a week.
We have just a couple of minutes left, so I like to end a little bit lighter. Do you have a favorite book and the last book that you read?
I don't have time to read books, but you know what I do? I watch shows. Actually, it's my way of kind of unwinding for the day. So I do about 30 minutes at the end of the day, and I'm loving a show called The Offer, which is about how The Godfather was made. And
yes, I did hear that is very, very good.
It's a really good watch and kind of an unbelievable story. And I think actually a really good example of that grit, right? When you're mission focused, what you'll do to get it done.
You mentioned surfing in terms of sports and unwinding. Do you have any favorite sport teams that you root for?
I don't watch a lot of sports, but I'm a big surfer, so I do watch the World Surf League, WSL, and I'll follow swells when they have big competitions. But and I follow some surfers, but that's about it.
Do you have a favorite vacation spot? I presume it's something related with surfing.
It is. I know, big surprise. I love Hawaii's easy because I'm on the West Coast. But of course, some of my favorite spots are much farther away. So Bali and Indonesia, and East Asia.
And then final question, biggest inspiration in life?
Oh, I have to say my family, picked us up. They were in their mid-30s, didn't know any English, wanted a better life for us, moved to the States and made it happen. And we were the first to go to college here and really set us up for a life of potential and success.
Well, Lily, I greatly appreciate you giving me a few minutes. If someone wanted to find Piñata, how would they do that?
Check us out at Piata.ai. You can download the app in the App Store for free, sign up for your free credit reporting for those rent payments. And if you want to contact me, I'm on LinkedIn.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Continued success to you and the team, and hopefully we'll get you back sometime in the future.
Awesome. Thank you, Todd.